How's it going? And welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. I'm a musician, producer, and Ableton Certified Trainer out of New York. And many of you that know my work know that I like to produce Ableton Live Packs, instruments, effects, and tools you can use in your own music. And for the last 10 years, I've been creating free ones you can download and use in your projects right now. There are over 200 of them. And recently, with the help of my friend Animus Invidius of PerformModule.com, we've repackaged the first 200 of these Ableton Live Packs into two self-installing Ableton Live Packs. So you just double-click on them and they install into the packs places of your user library. And on top of that, each instrument has its own little sound preview. So when you click on it, you can hear what the sound of the instrument is. There are over 500 instrument, audio effect, and MIDI effect racks in this download. There are 555 drum samples, and there are all kinds of sounds from traditional drums to electronic drums to found percussion, weird stuff that I've just turned into drums. It's a very creative and experimental thing, but there's so many cool sounds. There's over 700 clips you can use. So there's a ton of tools that will take you ages to go through. The music you're hearing now in the background was made with a bunch of these sounds from the Live Pack archive, and you can get this all now on my website, brianfunk.com, for just $10, and you get the whole thing in this nice, neat, organized fashion. Even better, you can join my music production club and get the Ableton Live Pack archive free with your membership. And the Music Production Club gets you new tools in your inbox every month for just $6 a month. Or you can get a 3-month membership for $15 or a 6-month membership for $25. Save some money. And with that membership, you get the current downloads, which as of the time of this recording in January 2021, that comes with my rhythm drum sample pack, the Ableton Live Pack archive, my arrangement templates to help you arrange your songs and take ideas to finish songs, a live performance and Ableton Live video course, my Ableton Live performance template so you can get started on your live performances, a pack of Music Production Club exclusive instruments. So these are additional instruments from some of my most popular packs, like my Juno 106 or my 80s VHS packs. You get extra sounds that no one else gets. And there's also the What Bob Ross Teaches Us About Music Production book that I wrote last summer. And that takes the philosophy of Bob Ross and applies it to music production. And it might help you get some ideas going and just have fun with the joy of making music. That's if you join the Music Production Club. You can go to brianfunk.com/MPC to join that. Or just head to my website, brianfunk.com, and check out all the stuff that is there. There's plenty of free downloads for you, tutorials, lots of other good stuff. Today's show features another Ableton Certified Trainer. His name is Derek VanScoten, and he goes by Cloudchord. And Cloudchord is really doing some awesome stuff online. He's got an excellent YouTube channel if you want to learn music production from the perspective of a guitar player especially, and some live looping. He's the guy. He is an amazing guitar player. He's got some excellent tutorials that will really teach you some great stuff. I've learned a ton from him. Our history goes way back to the early 2010s when we first met presenting in New York. We were both presenting some Ableton Live features, I think around Live 9 or maybe the release of Push, somewhere around there. He's a really nice guy. He's a great teacher. What's really cool about this episode is he plays some music for us. So he busts out his guitar and he does some live looping and basically creates really beautiful pieces of music effortlessly in a couple seconds right before our ears and eyes. If you watch this on YouTube, you can watch him do it in real time. It's pretty impressive, and the music is beautiful. He's got a new EP coming out called CloudCovers, and this is all guitar-based covers of some really awesome tunes like Purple Rain and How Deep Is Your Love. And what's so nice about this is every sound comes from the guitar. The drums, the bass, the weird atmospheric sounds you hear in there. It's all guitar-based. And in this episode, Derek shows us some of these sounds firsthand and how he made them. And I'm just thrilled about this episode because he does so much demonstration and it's really inspiring. And to find out more about Derek, head over to his website, cloudchord.net. Please welcome to the show, Derek VanScoten, aka Cloudchord. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Thank you. We've been trying to work this one out for quite a while now. And it's good to
That we
finally get a
have.
chance to talk. And I think in the meantime, so much stuff has come up that we've got even more conversation to cover.
Yeah, amen for that.
So you're making music as Cloudchord these days? When did you
Sure
start with
am.
the name
Sure am.
Cloudchord? I think you were doing DVS back in the day, right?
Yeah,
Those are
when you and I met, I was DVS living in Brooklyn, New York. When you and I met, we were both based out of the New York-ish, city-ish area. I was in Brooklyn. You and I met at TechServe,
yeah.
I believe, at like a Live 9 event, something around that area, or that era, right?
Yeah, that was
So,
the tech serve. Hank Shockley was running those events, and
yeah,
I think
yeah,
you're right. It
exactly.
was like something around Live 9 or Push or one of those types of things. But yeah, we were
Right,
both there.
totally. Yeah, we were both presenters at the time, I do believe.
I was really excited to see another guitar player using Live because, live, especially more so, I'd say about 10 years ago, whenever that was, like everyone just thought of Live was like kind of DJing, electronic music. So when I would tell like my friends I'm using Ableton Live, you guys should check it out. They're like, yeah, but I'm not a DJ. I'm like, no, man, you got to try it. You can do whatever you want with it. So seeing you playing guitar was like, finally, like, this is really cool to see this getting used this way.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I came into my relationship with Ableton Live via it being a tool for bands. So, I came like by the time you saw me play where it was just me up there doing my solo thing, I had gone through many incarnations of my relationship with the DAW becoming further away from bands. But still, compared to like DJ culture, I was very much a live act. But when I started, I was like flying in like claps and chord progressions behind a full band to like beefing out the sound, that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, so to answer your original question, I changed names about 5 years ago, just celebrated my 5th anniversary. So, yeah, I went by DVS for years. That's my initials. And then honestly, like the writing was on the wall for branding. It was just such a hard name to get any momentum with. I joke with people like it would have been easier if I called myself Apple because there were literally so many DVSs, more than there are Apples. And a lot of them are really successful brands that were both in music and outside of music. So I had like direct and indirect competition with the branding. So it took about a year to figure out a name that captured the sound that I wanted to do, and Cloudchord was what I finally decided on. So did about a year of remixes in 2016, and then around 2017 really started digging into my own music and kind of haven't looked back.
Nice. Yeah, that's like an ungoogleable name, right? DVS. It's just there's certain terms you just can't Google, right? So
But right, exactly. So, and that was a huge lesson that I get to talk with other artists about or students of like, if you're going to pick a name and you haven't even started, pick a really good one that is memorable, that isn't hard to spell, to where you can just say it to somebody and they can just go find it without you having to give any caveat of, oh, well, it's my name and music and .net. It's like, well, you're already playing a losing game.
Yeah, it's hard enough to get people to go check your stuff out to begin with. And if you're going to challenge them, I've learned this lesson a million times myself. And I finally just gave up and started going with my name, just my name, Brian Funk. Simple, which is not a pseudonym. People think it is, but that's just how I was made. So
that's how you were made. I love it.
And it's such a relief, too, when you finally have something you can just relax with and not worry about and not have to explain everything. Yeah, I hear you 100%. Do yourself that favor, everyone. Don't make it too hard.
Do yourself that favor. Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a great name though. It really captures what you're doing. It implies a little bit of guitar, I think, on some level, especially once you like dig in. And the kind of I don't know if whimsical's the word, but there's like this fun, like positive vibe going on with what you're doing. So I like it. I think it's a nice fit. I've actually sort
Thanks,
of
man.
like rediscovered you because I came across some video somewhere and I was like, Cloudchord, that's cool. And I was like, oh, I know this guy. Like, come on, that's Derek.
That's
So
funny.
I think it's
See, and
cool.
now that's great. Like that's the beautiful thing about when your new name is working, when people who knew you as something else rediscovered you without the correlation initially, because that means
That's
you stumbled
exactly it.
upon me.
Yeah. Yeah, you showed up on my radar, you know. You're doing the things that I'm into,
Love it.
you know.
Totally.
So
Cool.
I'm really digging the YouTube stuff you've been doing lately. And learning a lot too, even as like a guitar player myself, a lot of cool approaches to playing. And uh, I never heard of the caged idea, for instance, until I heard you talk
Of
about
the
that.
caged idea.
Never, yeah, which
Right.
is
Right.
kind of like the patterns of chord shapes throughout the guitar. Just something I
Yeah.
think you kind of pick up on, but to have it just explained that way was for me awesome. So thank you as a guitar player.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's part of I used to be the kind of guitar player where I knew what I knew and I could play in groups and I could make even other people's music fine because I was adequate enough with my ears and my theory, but I didn't necessarily know how to explain it in a really digestible way. And it actually took years of teaching to just refine things like that of like caged. That's 5 chord shapes. That's all you need to know. Give me 120 seconds and I can explain it to you. That kind of thing. you know?
Yeah,
So
teaching does that to you, I think, when you have to actually articulate what it is that you understand sometimes on a level, beyond words. And to distill it
right.
down, that to
Right.
me has been, when I became an English teacher, like to have to explain this stuff, I was really learning it.
Mm-hmm.
You like, have to relearn it. So,
Right. 100%.
I appreciated the video also you did on the looper techniques.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I
Yeah,
wanted to maybe talk a little bit about that at some point,
nice.
because a lot of people, when they see me and they see guitar, they're like, oh, you're a looper guy, like how Keller Williams is or Tash Sultana or people like that who are, I don't know if that's how you properly say her name, but people that are known as like looping artists. But a lot of times I'm like, well, I am, but I really use it in a lot of more like production kind of ways than like, hey, here's the bass part. Now here's the chords. Now.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, the big one, which I actually want to talk about today at some point, was 1 loop per chord. So, like, I'd use looper for each chord, and I make a loop for that chord. So whenever C happens, it has its own loop.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And then you
Yeah.
can I use looper for that, or I'll use clips, that kind of stuff, and it creates. It's fun because you get this like weird arrhythmic texture in the background, but it only comes up during that chord,
Hmm.
and so then we hear larger patterns of like, oh, this is 4 different loops happening behind 4 different chords.
Yeah, it
So
builds like a nice texture. That's exactly what I was speaking of too. That video. Yeah, it's a great
nice,
technique that I hadn't seen, and that was something I enjoyed about what you're doing because as a guitar player myself, like that avenue of like doing the looping, whether it was with like one of the Boss loop stations or just using live,
right,
I just never got too excited about it myself for what I do. There are people
right.
that do it
I
incredibly
see
well,
that.
but
Right,
whenever I try to bring in the guitar into that sort of situation, I was just like, I wasn't feeling it. So I was happy to see how you were
right,
using it in these more creative ways. That kind of opened my way of thinking about it a little bit too. It's not just for layering, and you can kind of build like little sections just for your production, like you said, for those chords or different parts of the song, and then it's not so much that you're building a whole song off it,
right,
like you said.
right. Exactly. Yeah, I love that. That's pretty fun to do. And it's fun to do too is like, so say you have 4 chords and they're a measure each. So you make a 1 measure loop for each of them. But when you're actually making the loop for each one of them, do longer loops than a measure. do a 4-measure loop. So every time you come back to G major 7, it's like it's that chord and all the stuff that's happening behind it. Maybe it's a different part of the phrase, but it's the same kind of sound. And so it even gives you another level of randomization in your music. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. You keeping things fresh. Like things can loop, but they can also evolve as they loop in that way.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I think like ambient artists are great at that. Brian Eno, of course, the master, the godfather in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah.
At least of modern ambient music,
He gets credit for the term, I believe. So
right. Exactly.
That's pretty cool when you can coin a genre, especially something that's so wide like that.
Right. What a rare thing to be able to do. Like a genre that is so prominent and obvious now, but it wasn't as obvious 60 years ago as to what to call it.
Yeah, like music you could either pay attention to or totally ignore and still enjoy in the same level.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I've been digging into some of your music lately, especially you sent me the link, which I thought was I'm sure you want to talk about at some point, the CloudCovers. What I'm really and you're kind of already getting into it, but one of the things I'm really interested about your music is that it sounds so like organic and alive and not loopy. And we're talking about using the looper right now. And I'm saying like one thing I really appreciate about it, it doesn't feel like a loop. You've got this way of bringing things to life where it just has a nice energy to it. And sometimes I think when you're working in the DAW, and especially live, if you're using session view, it's easy to slip into very repetitive loops.
Yes. Yep. Totally.
So what's my question then? I guess any thoughts about that? Any like techniques, any ideas?
Yeah. The first thing that I do, because a lot of so let's zoom out here and talk about the whole context of my EP. So my EP is coming out this Friday, and it's 6 cover songs. All the sounds were made from guitar, even the kick drum and the snare and the hi-hats and all that stuff. But what you're saying is it doesn't sound loopy. It's not like, oh, that's cute. He started with like a little kick drum, and then now everything's kind of always there and it gets really busy. And then, he pulls some stuff out, but he's kind of stuck in whatever he is. And you can't have like these immaculate arrangements, that's the next level. So a lot of these tunes, I wanted to start with the idea of like a guitar looper and doing that kind of thing for your drums and all that. But like, how do you get it to the next level to where if you hear it in a playlist of other beats, you're like, that was rad. That production-wise, mix-wise, it totally held up, but it was obviously like very guitar heavy, And so really the pinpoint of like what you're asking is like, how do I get it from those boxy clips in session view to like this beautiful thing in arrangement? And the answer is fuzzy boundaries, which is something Dennis DeSantis talks about in his book, 64 Creative Strategies for Making Electronic Music, is fuzzy boundaries are the things that start in one phrase, not at the beginning, just somewhere randomly through, and then end later on in another phrase. And so they create like almost arrhythmic phrasing. So you have sounds that come in somewhere in the third bar, and then they go over for a while. And so then you get, when you start using fuzzy boundaries, even if your skeleton of your tune is very much blocks and loops and clips like that are just literally loop brackets that you're dragging out, if you have enough fuzzy boundaries and you use it well, then you can really craft an amazing arrangement. And, it could be like a loop comes in that's another layer. It could even be automation of like, hey, filtering started happening on this thing. So, lots of automation in different places. Or even if I have like a guitar loop that is just like 2 chords back and forth, I might like put a frequency shifter and an LFO map to it so that, and have it like be a really long phrase of this frequency shifting that's, I don't know, 13 and a half bars it works out to, or something like that, to where the guitar never sounds the same at any point on any loop, So you get like fuzzy boundaries and randomization, I think, is really the two bullseyes there,
Right. Yeah, for that, I use the unlinked envelopes in the clip. I think that's probably a big tool of yours, I'd imagine then, because you can have the automation that go at its own amount of time, and even though you have like a 1-bar thing repeating, it's always a little different every repeat.
Right. It could be like through composed. It could be like 197 bars of automation for a 1-bar loop, that never repeats, that you just did live for 5 minutes of like tweaking your knobs.
Yep, just moving them around, and then those are fun tricks. And when you start layering over, like maybe the automation on that one's like 9 bars, and then you have another clip that's like 14, and then they never repeat the same way anymore, even in relationship to each other.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, I think what's nice about the covers album that's coming out Friday, which is good to know. We'll definitely make sure people hear about that. When I first listened to it, I didn't read that it said every sound is derived from guitar, and I didn't notice it. I was just listening. And I was like,
"That's beautiful.
This is cool." So it's not a gimmick, is what I'm saying. It's not just like, "Oh wow, yeah, cool, he did that," but it's totally enjoyable without any understanding or knowledge that that's even going on.
Thanks, man.
Which I think that just shows like you're taking it beyond just like some simple, like maybe pick scratching as like something rhythmic.
Right. It's like maybe I almost did too good, not to like pat myself on the back, but like I almost did too good of a job of mixing and mastering it, because the people are like, "That's guitar. That kick drum is guitar." And so what I did was took guitar and tried to make it into every sound, and I wanted it to hold up against other like hip hop or dance electronic drum set sounds. So there's my kick. That came from like thumb over the neck pickup, trying to get a fat sound and then processing it. Here's a snare. That is this. As you can hear, it's pretty wide. I think I combined 2 of them and then put a reverb on there. Convolution Pro, Max for Live. There's a vacuum. There's another similar thing, just another guitar with different sound. This is what I call the side stick, and that's like the back of my acoustic. I have a Taylor acoustic, and I just did a flam there. There's another version of that. That is like, just doing it kind of a million times and getting it to fit. And the hard thing too about some of this is like, even when I would just be muted, like I had to keep it in key because there was inevitably like some harmonic information there. So I couldn't just like, I had to build like new hats and new snares for a bunch of these tunes because they were in different keys and just the same old one didn't work. There's some more percussion. That's like wiggling of the strings. There's another little bridge flick. That is actually, let me turn it up a little bit. That is this.
Nice.
It's the strings over the headstock. I can't even remember what that is. It's highly processed. I call this the Weiro, like kind of thing. Here's a crash. That was me just going like this and putting a ton of reverb on and pulling out all the lows, just like. And then I call that Pong. I think that was a harmonic that somewhere around there, something like that. So together, you can build a beat that's, and maybe add some hats. Then I could like loop guitar on top of it. Check this out. Do another one here. And so on and so forth, you know. Kind of
That was
mess
nice.
with it.
That was
Thanks,
very
man.
nice. Right on the fly too, like that. That was
Right
pretty
on
cool.
the fly. And one thing I'll do is like I'll take maybe this melody, which is this. One of the first things I try to do is like, how does it sound doubled, pitched an octave down? Check it out. So much fatter.
That was the two of them then? Double?
Yeah, so this is the melody. Yeah. This is the second loop I made. I just duplicated it, pitched it down.
Instant bass player.
Instant bass player. Exactly. And then, you know, there's so much you could do there. And then I might do like check this out, like do some pedal action for some ambience. Wow. That kind of thing. What if I pitch what I just played up an octave, you know? Oops, not gain, transpose. Throw some...
There's nice texture on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, this is a decent foundation for something.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Love it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, and I really like how as you pitch those around, like you kind of get, especially on the high one, I noticed like the artifacts of the pitching really work in your favor in creating like some kind of like, I guess texture is the word really. Just, it almost sounds like a tape hiss or something that just adds a little more interest.
Exactly. Yeah, especially on these like spacey things, you know. It's like weird things that aren't perfect, even in really good polished music, like make the music go forward a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know?
I totally agree. I mentioned to you earlier, I love destroying sounds and songs, even just running them through crazy things. Like,
totally.
I've been doing the daily January challenge, trying to make some kind of little jam every day. And
cool.
Part of the fun of doing it every day is you can totally just go wild on an experiment and not care because you're going to have something tomorrow anyway. And I've been breaking so many of the rules that you're supposed to follow, whether it's like gain staging stuff where you're just kind of blasting things out. And I'm surprised at how often it sounds really cool. You know, maybe, you know, I might be going a little extreme on some of the experiments, but what I'm getting out of it is like, you know, it's just like hardware, really. Like these days, I guess what they're doing with the DSP, it's not becoming this harsh digital distortion it used to be. And there's some like nice, weird stuff that happens, artifacts and.
Yep, totally. You know, when I'm teaching about mixing, I bring up Bonobo a lot because he's a great example of he's thought of as making very beautiful and pretty music. You know, he's very successful in the beautiful down tempo realm. But if you like really listen to his mixes closely, everything is distorted at least a little bit. You know? Like it's the most beautiful angelic thing, but even the strings, like they have a little bit of like grit and glisten on them. And he's a master of that kind of thing, I think, of destroying things, but somehow they're still like breathtakingly beautiful.
Yeah. It becomes like an addiction almost. Like once you start doing on one thing, you kind of what can I do there?
Exactly. So yeah, I think transposition for the lo-fi stuff is fun. we had talked about too, like the frequency shifter. That's pretty fun. Like, so one thing I might do for that top layer there, so I'll put a frequency shifter, and then I'll go into max, and I'll grab an LFO, and I'll just map it to the fine knob. And at first it starts out crazy, but then I'll just like refine it. So yeah, that's too fast and too much. Just a little bit of like detuning, frequency modulation, yeah. So yeah, basically like I mapped an LFO to the frequency knob or frequency shifter, had it go to really slow rate and not that wide of a range, and then turn the dry wet on the frequency shifter way down so that the whole thing is just like kind of, it's there in the background, and then you put like a little echo or something after it. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's a great sound.
And you put it all together. You mentioned the bass. I think even like that one that I tuned down an octave. Not that one, this one. It could probably go down another octave and be like, let's see.
I love what it does to that reverb too.
Right? Totally. Pretty cool.
That's great, man. I feel like I should let you go and finish it. That's real nice.
Yep. So are there certain things you like to do for lo-fi? Like, do you have any things that are like just kind of naturally things your go-tos?
I do like that frequency shifter trick. So I'll line up. So I made a VCR audio effect rack. It's probably one of the most downloaded things of all my little packs there. And
when you first released that, didn't you do it under Afro DJ Mac?
Yeah. This is going back like a long time ago. I don't know, 6-7 years probably.
Yeah, like 2013 or something like that.
I bet.
13 or 14.
And what that rack is there's 3 frequency shifters, I think, in a row. And they're all kind of just slightly moving the pitch, just a little bit. And you can control how much. And then I think there's like a chorus and some glue compressors. Glue compressors is really fun if you line them in a row and like cranking up the volume. You're going to need to turn them down at the end later on. But when you put a few together, you have to have that soft clip knob on button going too. And it gets you this like nice crunch. I mean, it can get really crazy. You put like 10 of them in a row and like really wild stuff happens. But
yeah, I bet.
So I like to do that a lot on the master channel. Just have something kind of just screwing with the pitch a little bit. So you almost don't notice it. Yeah, I usually, my rule of thumb, except for lately, is to apply the effect until I really notice it and then back it off. Lately I'm actually applying it till I notice it, then cranking it even more. But yeah, that's a fun one. I like recording to all different kinds of mediums. So I've been using like a micro cassette, like the ones we used to speak into in the old days.
Nice.
A little tiny answering machine cassette tape. And like just record what's coming out of my speaker, put a sound, get it on there, and then bring it back in. And lately too, recording like guitar parts, like for a song, like a whole playthrough of the song, and then bringing that into the computer and building on top of that as like the foundational track. It's been just super fun, because you get that kind of just spirit of you just playing, the looseness of it, but then also you get like that quality under there, even on the phone, like a voice memo. I did one where I was doing it in the kitchen while I was making dinner. So I was like boiling some pasta. I was like, all right, I got to do this thing for today. And my wife was in the other room on some kind of Zoom call, and you can hear her in the background a little bit.
Nice.
You know, a little bit of, there's like natural reverb because it's a little distanced, and it just puts, when you start layering on top of it, all of that stuff gets a little masked and covered up, and it just sounds like it's happening somewhere.
Right. Totally.
When you record in the computer, especially if you're not using any microphones and you're just doing MIDI stuff, like it exists in a complete vacuum. There's just pure silence, which never happens anywhere. They have they have that chamber somewhere in Europe that's like the most silent place in the world, and like people can't even stay in it long enough to like really, like they go crazy like hearing nothing.
Right.
They start hearing like their blood going through their veins, and it even even in that room you don't get the same kind of silence you get on the computer.
Right.
So I find anything I can do to make stuff sound like it's happening somewhere. Like reverb does that too a little, but I really like natural sounds. Like it could be nature, it could be someone having a conversation in the background, or like I think that brings stuff to life, and it gives you like a little extra something mysterious to try to listen to.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it gives it life. The randomization. You know, talk about fuzzy boundaries and randomization, and so
I mean, that randomization is like my favorite feature in Live 11. Is all that probability stuff. I think they're calling it chance now. It looked like they changed that.
Right.
But you can put your MIDI notes in there and just say 45% chance it'll actually play.
Right.
And then,
so great.
And then again, like you could have your 1-bar loop never sound the same for the whole track.
Yeah. Such an amazing. It'll be interesting, like, to talk about that feature with you 2 years from now, because I remember when audio to MIDI came out with Live 9, I was like, wow, this is a game changer. Like, I almost was like, this should like kind of be illegal. You know what I mean? Because it's just like so easy to translate information. You know, it's like there used to be this like work of like, either you sampled it or you learned it by ear, and now it's like, damn, I could just take the sample, throw it in, and do some notes like, hey, check out this thing I wrote. You know, but then it's because even me, who like I'm pretty advanced on theory and performance and ears, I use audio to MIDI all the time because it's just so fast and I just love it. It's a beautiful thing, even for harmonic stuff. Of like, oh, that's a great sample. What the heck is going on in there? Just, you know, throw it in, clean it up, change the key, change the BPM, write a riff to it. Now you got a song.
Yeah. Yeah, it is wild, right? Like it's going to be like impossible to like get in trouble or something. Or impossible to not get in trouble.
Right. Yeah, and now though you can you know, you could do like audio to MIDI and random or chance. So it's like pretty easy to come up with somewhat live sounding stuff without it being live.
Yeah. It's like all the stuff I used to not want my drummers to do. Like, because, you know, you're the drummer, you got all these little drums and cymbals, and you can't help but hit them once in a while. You're getting bored back there, and the song might call for just that straight beat, but you kind of, you know, I don't know what it is. It happens to me when I sit behind the drums too.
Right.
And, but it used to always drive me crazy. Like, just play a simple beat. It doesn't need that. But now I find myself like programming in these things I don't really want to happen, but I kind of like say, all right, you can do this like 20% of the time, this extra kick drum. And it just makes it feel like a real person's there. That just sort of gets a little mischievous and has to do a couple extra things every now and again.
Right? Love it. I love it.
You know, what you're doing with like all that percussion with the guitar is something I always try to preach to students. You know, I teach a Berkeley online class in sampling, so it's all about like coming up with your own sounds. And if you want to get your own style, your own like kind of feel to your music, like that's a great way to do it. And what you've done with all those guitar sounds, I mean, those are yours. Like, no, even if I did that myself, you know, I'm not going to process them the same way. I'm not going to do, you know, I could take everything you said and just go and try to rip you off, like an hour later, and it won't come out like that.
Right. You have different gear, you have a different body,
Yeah.
you have a different interface. The molecular makeup in your studio is different than mine. If we really want to like get down to it.
But there's just so much possibility in this stuff that you can really develop your own sound. And I mean, I think you're really doing a nice job with that, where I can hear a track and have a pretty good idea that's coming from you.
Thanks. Yeah, somebody tweeted at me like last week or so, this trumpet player. He was like, man, I heard this Purple Rain cover come on, and in the first measure, I knew it was Cloudchord. I thought like that's such a great, it was just a wonderful thing to hear. I felt like so honored that people can hear that. So, but to be totally honest and real about it, a lot of my sound has come through experimentation, absolute failure, shame, humility, victory. Like it's the whole mix of everything. Like being frustrated because it felt like people were sleeping on me as a brand, and then like trying stuff out that felt like it was supposed to make me successful, but it didn't. It wasn't part of my voice. Just like the whole experience as an artist that I've gone through to when I actually just settled on being me is when things started to take off for me, which is pretty cool, Yeah. Now I don't, and I think because I went to school for music and I wanted to be a sideman. I wanted to grow up and be in somebody else's band as their lead guitarist. And so part of my formal years of music were priding myself on somebody that could do anything on this instrument. Like I go play a rock gig and I go play a bluegrass gig, and then I go play with a DJ, and I could do it all. And then I got really into the music producer world where like people really pick a lane, and they dig deep and not wide a lot of times, And so through all that experimentation of like playing heavier guitar on bass drops and then playing ambient music and the whole mix is really when I settled on my Cloudchord sound, which is like mainly like hip hop, trip hop, lo-fi hip hop. I got some house in there and stuff like that. But really came from just a lot of experimentation and seeing what worked and what didn't,
I think that's great to hear. And it's kind of like a freeing thing, like you're not trying to be anything. You found your thing, you're kind of going with what feels natural. But it doesn't necessarily come so naturally. You have to go through all of that, and failed experiments are successes, really. Like you've figured out something that doesn't work, and you can maybe cross it off your list, or maybe take some little part of it that did work. And there's no failures in a lot of ways. But I hear what you're saying, that as a musician, like you get used to, it's almost like not even failure. It's like just not even being noticed. Like you didn't even get to fail.
That's what it is. Yeah.
But to be willing,
it's like even worse.
It's like the girl in high school didn't know you existed. You sit behind her in 4 periods a day.
Right. That's funny. I always make the joke that like the bass player of the band is like that guy in the movie, like the nice guy, because the bass player, like we all take, or the bass part even, like we all, especially the sub bass, like we all take it for granted. And then the instant it's gone, you notice that it's not gone. Yeah. You're like, where'd that go? Where'd that sound go?
Right.
And I think of it like when the girl comes back to the sweet intellectual guy instead of the captain of the football team. She's like, you were there all along and I didn't notice you until you were gone. Like that's how I think of sub bass.
That's funny.
Like you just never notice it until it's not there. And you're like, oh, you're always there for me.
Well, it's not out there doing the flashy thing, the game-winning catch, but it is so important to the foundation of so much music these days. You take it out and it's empty.
Right.
What happened? What are we standing on? Nothing.
Exactly. What do you think? You want me to try to do this one loop per chord thing?
Yes, please.
Yeah. To do that?
Yeah, you
So
want
let's
to just give everyone a rundown of it, and
Yeah, so you initially mentioned that I have a looper tutorial on my Cloudchord YouTube channel, and it's about like various looper tricks. And one of the things that I have been doing for years in my tunes is what I call one loop per chord. And so we use the looper and we create a unique loop for every chord in the chord progression. So what I'll do is I'll even just start with one chord. So if I do a beat here, let me just do like one chord. Ooh, that is a lot of reverb. Where'd that come from? Oh, it's my pedal. All right, so here we go. D minor. So that's our tonality, right? Now I can even just turn off. All right, so I'll go to my looper. I'll do 2-bar loop. Here we go. I'm gonna redo that. Okay, so let's say that's what the D minor sounds like. Now I'll do a second loop that's a C major. So what I did there is I just did a 2-bar loop in the looper, and then I dragged it out into a new track. So now let's do a C major. So gotta turn off that reverb. Here we go. So now I'll do a new loop. So now what we've got.
just reverse that somewhere. So,
Yeah, I reversed it in the
Nice.
looper, which I'll probably actually just do in the clip that I rendered. So here's chord 1. Now here's chord 2. Go back to the first one. I reversed the first one too. So that's the basic premise of that, you know. And we could do as many or as few chords. I made those short loops for now, but like I said earlier, I could make longer loops, and then as the song went on, use different parts of the loop so that it evolved, so that it was a familiar sound, but not the exact same thing.
Right.
Getting those fuzzy boundaries.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's
You know?
that's such a great technique. It's a real crafty way of using the looper. You know, and it fills out like you almost don't even need much else going on. It's very nice the way it is.
Totally. One
Okay.
thing I might do too is like I'll take a tremolo on the looper here. But then I might like map an LFO to it. And map it to like the amount. You know, maybe even do like a second mapping that is to the rate. That kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, it gives it a lot of movement.
Exactly. Next thing you know, you got like 3 LFOs and then we got like 17 mappings, and you're like, I could never recreate this sound live.
Yeah, right. That's, I guess, another ball game. But what a cool
Exactly.
way to just come up with like these nice beds. Like you could maybe maybe a pad, but this like does the
Sure.
job of that. It's like so much more alive and rhythmic and
Totally. Totally. And what I do talk about, like I get this question a lot when people want to study with me, is they'll see this and be like, hey, I live in a beach town and I got a summer gig where I get to do like guitar loops. I'd love to like take some lessons and pick your brain about stuff. And one of the big things that I talk about is like trying to translate the studio to the live. You like really have to pick your battles. And one of my biggest things I say is like, don't bite off more than you can chew. Give yourself like 3 or 4 new things per time. Because if you give yourself 12 to 15 new mappings and all this stuff, like you might end up being a deer in the headlights and get frustrated. But if you do a few new things, you can really like pace yourself and experiment and feel comfortable, and you can take risks. And like my studio, I have synths everywhere and everything's plugged in, and I could do this like master spaceship looping thing if I want. But when I go play shows, it's like an Akai APC 40, a lap steel, and my guitar, and like that's it. And some floor stuff. But a lot of times I don't even gig with the push because it's just one extra element that I know I won't use enough because I essentially use my pedal board as a push because my hands are busy.
Yeah. It's a good point because when you're playing live, there's so many other variables. There's who knows what's going to be going on, and who knows what your sound system's going to necessarily be doing. What person is going to come up to you in the middle of whatever you're doing, and
Totally.
It's very smart. I've learned that mistake the hard way, where I go in with like a whole new setup, and you're just like, at certain points, you're just scratching your head.
Right. There's a sound coming from somewhere, and you can't figure out where.
And that just torpedoes you down the spiral of just, because now you're like, oh, not only do you not know what's going on, now you're worrying about what everyone's thinking.
Yeah.
It could be enough to make you never want to go back.
Yeah, totally. That's why you got to keep it simple. That's why I use the APC 40 is because everything is mappable. So I know exactly what every knob does, like my whole show.
Yeah.
I pick my battles and make it about that,
Yeah, I do the same thing with the APC 40. I map everything. I don't use the different like pages of knobs.
Right.
Because you're going to turn a knob. You don't need it, and you're going to turn a knob, and it's not going to do what you thought it did, and then you're going to go back to a different bank forgetting to turn the knob back, and then 2 songs later, you're going to wonder why everything exploded. And
Exactly. Yeah, like I always want this to be the low-pass filter on channel 1. This knob right here. I always know what it is. And I love you had the visual feedback, too, so if you're in a darker room, like you can see where knobs are at.
Yeah.
And, oh, that's at 4. That's why I'm not hearing bass right now.
Right. Yeah, you get those LEDs around the knob.
Exactly.
That's super handy.
Super handy. But then, the push is so beautiful for the studio.
Yeah.
It's, for me, it's really like the central nervous system of my studio, other than my guitars,
Yeah, I keep it right in the middle of my desk, actually.
Me too.
I use it live, but only for playing like melodies and drums sometimes. I don't go into the session view. I don't change any. The knobs are only there for the device I'm actually using in the moment on whatever instrument I'm playing. But, you could do a lot of the stuff you do on the APC 40 by switching pages. But again, I'm like you. I want that thing to just do what it does every time.
Right.
Like, no surprise here.
So here's a question about you and the push using it. So you're using note mode mostly is what you're saying. And so you're using like a lot of times on harmonic stuff.
Yeah.
So do you find like where are you in your experience as a musician? Are you is it easier for you to do like scales and chords on the push than it is the piano, or are you about the same? And the reason why I ask is because for me, I'm pretty good at the piano. I'm not like concert level, but I understand it really well, and it's easy for me to remember melodies on the piano. And when I went to the push, it was like all this new geometry that I had to learn for a performance. And I found it incredibly difficult. So it's amazing to me when people do like live melodic stuff, because I'm like, wow, you got to learn all these new patterns.
Well, I don't play the keys very well at all. I use them. I use the keyboard to play melodies and pluck out stuff. But no, I would never. It's not even. I couldn't even fake it. But on push, I'm actually surprised to hear you say that because I will set it up on the chromatic mode, and then it looks like guitar to me. You know, because you got like
Oh
each
yeah, because just everything's in the same place.
yeah, each horizontal row is like a string, and it's a fourth and a fourth and a fourth. So a lot of the chord shapes
Right.
on guitar I can just do on push that way. So that's how I
Right.
see it. And
Makes sense.
I was thrilled when it came out because I was like, I can't play the keyboard really. So this thing looks kind of familiar. Like I know how to make a C shape here, you know, where, you know, just other things on the piano, it's a little more foreign. You know, definitely like the muscle memory is not there. And so,
Right. That's
yeah.
cool. It's cool to get different perspectives on gear and performances and all that. You know?
Yeah, it looks like a guitar to me. So I know what those shapes look like.
Nice.
But that's all it is though. It's just for playing. Yeah.
Nice. Just melodies.
Yeah. So you've got
Makes
this
sense.
this record coming out. You said this Friday, which will be the 29th, I believe. Is that correct?
29th, I believe so.
Right? Yeah, 29th.
Let's see here. Yep. 29th.
So that's
6 tunes.
Yeah, I got the preview. Thank you. I appreciate that. I was telling you,
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Are you revealing what the songs are? Is it okay if I mention one that's locked?
Oh yeah, we can mention them.
The
That's fine.
Bee
We're
Gees
so
cover.
close to it. It's like whatever.
Yeah.
Bee Gees cover.
Oh man, that's like my favorite song by them too. And you know, you do it so nice,
good, right?
man. Really capture like that.
Thanks.
Because I mean, one thing I love about that song is the vibe. You know, just generally like the groove is real slow and smooth, and you really nailed that on your version. And the guitar playing is phenomenal.
Thanks, man.
It's just
Thanks.
great guitar music, even.
That was one of them that was one of the tunes. They all kind of evolved in different ways. Some of them like evolved with me looping like in the DAW, and others like I kind of worked out a lot of it just as a solo rendition and then split it up. And that with the Bee Gees one was initially like a solo piece that I was just kind of doing, and because it's actually more minimal than some of the other ones. A lot of them is like a bunch of chord layers, and then like a wah-wah guitar comes in for the voice. But that, like, I did the chords and the vocal all chord melody on the guitar, like one guitar as opposed to layers. So
yeah,
I think people dig it.
Yeah, it works really well, and it's great. Like I said, great guitar playing if you're into guitar playing, but also like the production end is beautiful too. I'm very happy for you, man.
Thanks,
I'm loving what you're doing. And
Well, I appreciate you having me.
yeah, I'm glad we finally got to work it out. And thanks for playing for us too. That was really fun. We had some kinks along the way, but we figured it out, I think. And it was great to hear you play and watch.
It's so much harder to do. It's so much harder to do a podcast when you have like these moving parts of live musical elements you're attempting to capture and from thousands of miles away. We're not in the same room,
right?
You know.
Hey, but we live in a cool time though that we can.
But we did it.
Get that close. Yeah, exactly. Nice. So, where do you like to send people to check out your work? Is it just cloudchord.net and then YouTube, Cloudchord?
Cloudchord.net is my homepage. That's the most all-encompassing, but I'm pretty much on all the social media, just at Cloudchord. So
nice.
Whatever your preferred lane of choice is. But if you go to my website, you can find, you can derivatively find all my social media pages.
Nice.
And one of the reasons why I like people to go to my website is so they can check out like my full discography, because it's a lot of times as a musician, it's hard for you to be able to, and people are like, where can I check out your music? And you don't necessarily have all your music on one platform as an artist for one reason or another, so they might miss stuff. So if you go to my website, they can check my music page and see all 4 albums and all the EPs that I've done and all the singles, and it's cool that way.
Yeah.
And then check out like what my latest tutorial is, and find out about my high school band.
Hey, I think it's smart because all that would have to happen is the social media platform of the day just needs to change a algorithm or, just go under or whatever, get hacked or something, having your own centralized place, I think, is the smart move.
Yeah. It's a wonderful thing. So
nice. And yeah, and everyone should get to the YouTube too. There's so many good tutorials, so much insight. I just think you're using this stuff in a really unique way. And as another guitar player, it's really fun to see. And we should probably mention your adorable little helper in your videos.
My daughter named Zyla. She definitely comes in and gives me cameos. So
yeah, she adds a lot of fun to it. I think it's really cool that you let her in there and include her in your work.
Most of the time she likes it. She's old enough now to where I kind of have to bribe her. Like, hey, I'll give you $2 if you come in and hang out my video for 10 minutes.
Nice. So she's learning some business too.
Learn some business. Yeah, she's actually done a few like commercials, like a yogurt commercial and a vitamin commercial. So she gets the whole, like, my wife a lot of times serves as her director. So, her on-set director. So she's really good at like taking direction and just having an awareness of like what it's like to be in a video and to look at the camera and all that kind of stuff,
Nice. Hey, those are like lessons you don't really learn in school. And I think that's really cool that you're including her in that and giving her another kind of education and a cool bonding thing too.
Right. Absolutely, man. Nice. Thanks for watching them.
I love them. I look forward to the next one. And I guess we'll thank everyone for listening. Please go check out cloudchord.net.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
And I hope you all have a great day.